In the village of Umuokwe, where yam heaps rise like small hills and the scent of roasted plantain hangs in the air, they remember the day Nneoma arrived. She stepped out of the bus wearing a white dress that caught the afternoon sun. Her beads clicked like soft rain as she walked. Her laughter was city-born and light. But something strange happened. The women in the market turned away when they saw her. Their loud chatter died mid-sentence. Children stopped playing. Even the goats seemed to sense something. Another bride. One old woman muttered under her breath. "May the spirits keep her safe," another whispered. Nneoma didn't understand why everyone looked at her with such sad eyes. She thought they were just shy around strangers. But deep down, something felt wrong. The air was too quiet. The smiles were too forced. And somewhere, not far away, the Obieze house seemed to exhale like a sleeping giant waiting to wake up. The elders always said the Obieze mansion was cursed. They whispered that it was built with earth taken from the wrong shrine. Sacred soil stolen under a waning moon when the spirits were angry. That first night, as Nneoma walked through the long hallways, she felt it. The silence. Not the peaceful kind that helps you sleep. This was different. It felt like the house was watching her, waiting for something. She counted the doors as she walked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doors in the corridor outside her bedroom. But when she reached the end, the hallway curved to the right. Why would a house bend where there was no corner? The wooden floors creaked under her feet, but the sound seemed to disappear quickly, like the house was swallowing every noise she made. Even her own breathing sounded too loud. Chuka, her new husband, was already asleep when she finally came to bed. He looked peaceful, but even in sleep, his face seemed worried about something. A week after the wedding, Nneoma was cleaning the ancestral room. This was where the family kept old photos and items from their grandparents. As she swept the floor, her broom got stuck on something. A loose floor tile had shifted, revealing a small space underneath. Inside, she found a pale ivory bracelet carved with strange symbols she had never seen before. The moment she picked it up, it felt warm in her hands. Not just warm, but alive, like it had a heartbeat. She put it on her wrist, and it fit perfectly. Too perfectly. Mama Eid, the old woman who helped around the house, walked in and saw the bracelet. Her face went white as chalk. She dropped the tray she was carrying, and the glasses shattered on the floor. "Where did you find that?" Mama Eid whispered, her voice shaking. "Under the loose tile," Nneoma said. "Is something wrong?" Mama Eid stared at the bracelet like she had seen a ghost. That belonged to Chidima, the first bride, the one who vanished 20 years ago. It started on the 4th night after she found the bracelet. Nneoma was lying in bed when she heard it. Crying. Not loud weeping or wailing. Just soft, heartbroken crying. At first, she thought it might be coming from outside. Maybe someone in the village was sad. But as she listened more carefully, the sound seemed to be coming from inside the house. Very close. She got up and pressed her ear against the wall next to her bed. The crying was definitely there, just on the other side of the wall. But that was impossible. There was no room behind that wall. She had seen the house from outside. The wall backed up to the garden. So where was the voice coming from? The crying continued for about 10 minutes, then stopped suddenly. Like someone had covered the person's mouth. Nneoma tried to wake Chuka, but he was sleeping so deeply, she couldn't shake him awake. The next morning, she asked him about it. He looked confused and said he hadn't heard anything. But something in his eyes told her he was lying. Every morning before the sun came up, Mama Eid would walk to the east wing of the house. That part was always locked. No one ever went there. Nneoma had asked Chuka about it once, and he said it was just storage for old things. But Mama Eid didn't go there to store things. She carried a small bowl with her. Inside was yam paste, bitter leaf, and red palm oil. She would place the bowl on the ground near the locked door, kneel down, and whisper things Nneoma couldn't hear. One morning, Nneoma woke up early and followed her. She hid behind a tree and watched. "Mama Eid," she called softly. "What are you doing?" The old woman jumped like she had been caught stealing. "Nothing, my child. Just checking on things." "Is that food for the ancestors?" Nneoma asked. Mama Eid looked at her with tired, sad eyes. "It's not the ancestors who are hungry in this house, my dear." Then she picked up the empty bowl and walked away quickly, leaving Nneoma with more questions than answers. The Aikshi festival came in October. The whole village celebrated with dancing, singing, and eating. Colorful fabrics hung from every tree. The talking drums sang all day, praising the spirits and asking for good harvests. But when the moon rose high in the sky, the elders gave a warning that made everyone's blood run cold. "Listen carefully," Elder Ogbuna said to the crowd. "When the drums beat 3 times after midnight, that is when the veil between our world and the spirit world becomes thin. Stay inside, lock your doors, and whatever you hear, do not go outside." Most people went home after that, but Nneoma couldn't sleep. Something about the warning made her nervous. She sat by her window, looking out at the empty village square. At exactly midnight, she heard it. 3 deep drum beats echoing through the night. Then, impossibly, she heard her grandmother's voice singing outside her window. The same lullaby her grandmother used to sing when Nneoma was little. But her grandmother had been dead for 5 years. That night, something impossible happened. As Nneoma walked down the corridor to get a glass of water, she saw it. A 7th door at the end of the hallway. A door that had never been there before. She stopped and stared. She had walked this hallway every day for weeks. She knew there were only 6 doors. But now there were 7. The new door was different from the others. It was made of dark wood that looked very old. The handle was brass, but it seemed to move slightly, like it was breathing. Against her better judgment, she walked toward it. Her bare feet made no sound on the wooden floor. When she reached for the handle, it was warm. Too warm. She turned it and stepped inside. The room was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of clay that moved like it was alive. The floor felt soft and warm under her feet. And in the darkness, she heard a voice. "We've waited long enough," it said. Before she could turn around, the door slammed shut behind her. She was trapped. Nneoma woke up in her own bed the next morning. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. But when she looked in the mirror to brush her hair, something was wrong. Her reflection was moving differently than she was. When she raised her right hand, the reflection raised its left hand. When she blinked, the reflection blinked a second later. Then the reflection spoke, even though Nneoma's mouth was closed. "You are the 13th bride," it said in her own voice. "The last one must awaken the first one." Nneoma stumbled backward and fell onto her bed. When she looked at the mirror again, it was normal, but there was a crack running down the middle of the glass. A crack that hadn't been there before. She touched the bracelet on her wrist. It was warm again, and she could swear she felt it pulse like a heartbeat. Something was very wrong in this house, and she was starting to understand that she might be in serious danger. Behind the family shrine in the main room, there was a loose stone. Nneoma had noticed it while cleaning, but she had never moved it. Today, something made her curious enough to look. Behind the stone was a small space. Inside was an old scroll, yellowed with age. She unrolled it carefully, afraid it might fall apart in her hands. What she saw made her heart stop. It was a list of names. 12 names, all written in the same handwriting. Next to each name was a red line drawn through it, like someone crossing items off a shopping list. Chidima, crossed out. Adago, crossed out. Nkem, crossed out. Amara, crossed out. The list went on. 12 names. 12 brides. All crossed out. At the bottom of the scroll, in fresh ink, was her own name, Nneoma. But this one wasn't crossed out yet. Her hands shook so hard, she almost dropped the scroll. The bracelet on her wrist was getting warmer and warmer, like it was trying to tell her something. When Chuka came home that evening, Nneoma was waiting for him with the scroll. She spread it out on the table and watched his face as he read it. He looked at the names, then at her name at the bottom. His strong shoulders began to shake. Then he started crying like a little boy lost in the rain. "They made the agreement before I was born," he said through his tears. "My father and his father before him. One bride every few years to keep the family wealthy and powerful." He reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled away. "I tried to fight it," he continued. "I told them I wouldn't do it. But they said if I refused, the house would take my mother instead. Then my sister. Then me." He looked into her eyes, and she saw that he really did love her. "I didn't want to love you, Nneoma. I tried not to, but I couldn't help it." And that was the cruelest part. When love and danger walk hand in hand. That night, Nneoma couldn't stay in the house. She ran to the Aro Ndizu forest, the ancient woods behind the village where the trees were older than anyone could remember. She ran between the massive tree trunks, branches scratching her arms and face. But even here, she wasn't safe. The leaves seemed to whisper her name as the wind blew through them. Daughter of the broken line, the wind seemed to say. The debt falls to you. She stopped running when something hit her on the head. A cola nut had fallen from the tree above her. When she picked it up, she saw that it had split perfectly in half. One half was red, the other was black. Her grandmother had once told her that when a cola nut splits this way, it means the spirits are trying to tell you something important. You must make a choice between two paths. She took both halves and put them in her pocket. She would need all the help she could get. The next morning, Nneoma went to see the village elders. Surely they would help her when they understood what was happening. She brought the scroll, the bracelet, and told them everything. About the crying in the walls, the seventh door, the mirror that spoke. She begged them to help her stop this madness. But Elder Ogbuna, the head of the village council, just smiled at her like she was a foolish child. One bride for 10 years of wealth and good harvests, he said calmly. Is that not a fair trade? The Obieze family brings prosperity to our whole village. What is the life of one girl compared to peace and plenty for hundreds of people? He picked up a roasted yam from the table and offered it to her. Eat something, child. You look tired. Perhaps you should rest and forget these silly dreams. Nneoma took the yam and threw it into the cooking fire. The flames hissed and turned green for a moment. I will not be the 13th, she said firmly. And I will make sure there is never a 14th. That night, Nneoma had the strangest dream of her life. She found herself standing in a place that looked like the inside of the earth. The walls were made of clay and stone, and small flames danced in the air without burning anything. In front of her stood a woman made of cracked clay and fire. Her eyes were ancient and filled with pain. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wine through caves. I was the priestess of this land, the woman said. I was the bridge between the living and the dead. They locked me beneath the house to steal my power. The woman reached out a hand made of flame and clay. Free me, child, and I will remember every name they tried to bury. I will give justice to every girl they sacrificed. Who are you? Nneoma asked. I am the spirit mother. I have been waiting under that house for 50 years, waiting for someone brave enough to break the chains. When Nneoma woke up, she knew what she had to do, but she also knew she couldn't do it alone. Mama Eid was awake when Nneoma found her in the kitchen before dawn. The old woman looked like she had been expecting her. You spoke to her, didn't you? Mama Eid said. The spirit mother. Nneoma nodded. You know about her? I was there when they buried her alive. Mama Eid whispered. I was just a young girl, but I remember. They said it was the only way to bind her power to the house forever. Mama Eid lit 7 white candles and placed them in a circle on the floor. She mixed white chalk with water and drew symbols around the candles. Symbols that looked like the ones on Nneoma's bracelet. This is very dangerous, she said as she painted strange markings on Nneoma's arms and face with the chalk mixture. If we fail, the house will take us both. They burned palm oil, charcoal, and a piece of hair from Nneoma's head. The smoke rose straight up, even though there was no wind. Enter the 7th room again tonight, Mama Eid said. But this time, don't be afraid. The spirit mother will protect you. At exactly 2:13 in the morning, Nneoma heard footsteps outside the house. She looked out her window and saw them. 12 women in white dresses walking through the compound gate. They were barefoot, and their hair hung loose around their shoulders. But their eyes were empty, hollow, like they had been crying for so long they had no tears left. They didn't knock on the door. They didn't need to. They walked straight through the walls like they were made of air. Nneoma could hear them moving through the house. Their footsteps were soft but heavy, like they carried the weight of years of sorrow. Then she heard their voices, all speaking together as one. We remember. We remember everything. And now it's time for the truth. The temperature in the house dropped so fast that Nneoma could see her breath. Ice began to form on the windows. And somewhere in the darkness, she heard the 7th door creak open. The 7th door was waiting for her, just like before. But this time, Nneoma wasn't afraid. She had the spirit mother's protection and the strength of 12 other brides who had died before her. She opened the door and stepped inside. The room with the moving clay walls was there, but now she could see a staircase leading down into the earth, down into darkness so thick it seemed solid. She followed the stairs down, down, down. The walls were covered with bones arranged in patterns. Old altars made of stone sat in corners, stained with things she didn't want to think about. And in the very center of the underground room was a cradle made entirely of human teeth. The spirit mother was waiting for her there. But now she looked more human, more real. "You came back," she said, and her voice was filled with pride. "You are braver than all the others." "I want to end this," Nneoma said. "I want to make sure no other girl dies because of their greed." The spirit mother smiled, and flames danced in her eyes. "Then let us begin the trial." The next morning, the guilty were summoned. Chuka, Elder Ogbuna, and 2 other men from the village council who had known about the deal. They came thinking they would just talk Nneoma out of her foolish ideas. But the spirit mother was there, standing in the main room of the house like she had every right to be there. "Each of you will hold this," she said, presenting 4 bowls filled with glowing coals. "Only those with clean hands can touch the fire without pain." Elder Ogbuna laughed. "This is nonsense. Just old woman's tricks." But when he reached for his bowl, the coals burned him so badly he screamed and dropped it. His hands were covered in blisters instantly. The same thing happened to the other 2 men. They cried out in pain as their skin burned. Chuka's hands also burned, but not as badly. He had participated, but his heart had never truly been in it. Then the spirit mother handed a bowl to Nneoma. She took it without fear. The coals felt warm and comfortable in her hands. They glowed brighter, turning from red to pure white. "The innocent can always hold the light," the spirit mother said. Elder Ogbuna fell to his knees, begging for mercy. His burned hands were shaking as he reached toward the spirit mother. "Please," he cried, "take my land. Take my money. Take my son's inheritance. Just don't hurt me." The spirit mother looked down at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "For 50 years, you fed daughters to the earth to keep your bellies full," she said. "You offered young girls to buy your prosperity. Now it's time for you to become part of the soil you love so much." The ground beneath Elder Ogbuna began to crack and open. Roots started growing up through the floor, wrapping around his legs like ropes. He screamed as the earth pulled him down, deeper and deeper until only his voice remained, echoing from somewhere far below. The other guilty men tried to run, but the house wouldn't let them leave. The doors wouldn't open. The windows were sealed shut. One by one, the earth claimed them all. Only Chuka remained, and the spirit mother looked at him with something like pity. The next day, the sky above Umuokwe turned dark. Not with clouds, but with something else. Something that made everyone look up in fear. Then it began to rain. But it wasn't water falling from the sky. It was red. Thick and red and smelling like iron and old memories. The villagers ran for their houses. Mothers grabbed their daughters and held them close. Children cried. Dogs howled. The red rain fell for 3 hours. When it finally stopped, the ground was stained crimson. And everyone knew that the land itself was angry. The spirits had awakened, and they remembered every wrong that had been done. Plants that had been green and healthy began to wither. The river ran red for days. And in the Obi's house, the walls began to crack and bleed. The village would never be the same. The price of their silence had finally come due. Following the spirit mother's guidance, Nneoma went to the village drum. The big wooden drum that sat in the center of the square and was used for festivals and announcements. She dug beneath it, her hands working frantically in the red-stained earth. About 3 feet down, she found something wrapped in old white cloth. Bridal cloth, yellowed with age. Inside were the bones of a baby. So small, so fragile. Chidimma's son, the spirit mother whispered beside her. The first bride was pregnant when they took her. They killed them both and hid the evidence. Nneoma's heart broke as she looked at the tiny bones. This child had never even had a chance to live. Never had a name. Never been loved. "I name you Ifeananya," she said softly, using the Igbo word for love. "You are loved now." She buried the baby properly, with prayers and flow. RS in tears. As she covered the small grave with earth, the ground trembled gently. Not with anger this time, but with gratitude. A spirit had finally been put to rest. The Obi's mansion didn't burn like houses do in movies. It didn't explode or fall down all at once. Instead, it simply folded in on itself, like a piece of paper being crumpled up by invisible hands. The walls sighed as they bent inward. The roof twisted and curled. The windows popped like soap bubbles. The 7th room was the last to go. It held on longer than the rest, as if it didn't want to give up its secrets. But finally, even it collapsed into dust and memory. When the dust settled, there was nothing left but a pile of clay and broken stones. The house that had stood for decades, that had swallowed 13 brides, was gone. And with it went the curse that had haunted Umuokwe for so long. The villagers came out of their houses slowly, afraid to believe it was really over. But the air felt different now. Cleaner. Free. The spirit mother stood under the ancient Udala tree where the house used to be. She looked peaceful now, like someone who had finished a long and difficult job. You could take my place, she offered Nneoma. You could become the bridge between the living and the dead. You have the power now. But Nneoma shook her head. She had seen enough of spirits and curses and dark magic. She wanted to live in the world of the living. Let me tell their stories instead, she said. Let me make sure people remember their names so this never happens again. The spirit mother smiled and nodded. That is an even greater power, she said. Then she began to fade, becoming transparent like morning mist. Thank you, daughter. You have given us all peace. And she vanished like wind through leaves, finally free to rest. Nneoma built a small hut by the river, far from where the Obi's house had stood. She planted a garden and learned to weave baskets to sell in the market. But her most important work happened in the evenings, when the young girls of the village would come to sit with her. She would tell them the stories, the real stories that the elders had tried to hide. Remember these names, she would say. Chidima, Adago, Kem, Amara, all of them. If you speak their names, they stay alive in our memory. The girls would repeat the names until they had them memorized. Then they would go home and tell their mothers and sisters. Soon, everyone in Umuokwe knew the true story of the Obi's house. And they made sure their daughters knew it too. No one would be allowed to forget again. Years passed, and something beautiful grew from the tragedy. The village started a new tradition called the Festival of Voices. Every year, on the anniversary of the day the house fell, all the girls and women of Umuokwe would gather by the river. They would wear white dresses and ivory bracelets like the one Chidima had worn. They would sing songs for the brides who had died. They would tell their stories. They would promise to never let such things happen again. Young girls learned that their voices mattered, that they had the right to say no, that their lives were valuable, and there were no more disappearances, no more mysterious deaths, no more secrets hidden behind closed doors. Because when people speak the truth out loud, darkness has nowhere to hide. Today, if you visit Umuokwe, you'll find that the Obi's name died with the house. No one carries it anymore. But that's not really true. The name lives on in a different way. It lives in every girl who knows her own worth, in every story that refuses to be silenced, in every voice that speaks up against injustice. Nneoma lived to be an old woman, and she never stopped telling the stories. Even on her deathbed, she whispered the names of the 13 brides to the young woman caring for her. And if you listen carefully when you walk through the village at night, you might hear something carried on the wind. Not crying this time, but singing. The voices of women who are finally free. They say that some houses eat silence and feed on secrets. But some girls speak fire. And fire burns away all the darkness, leaving only light and truth behind. Remember this story, my children. And remember that your voice has power. Use it well.